This is my old F450 chipper truck. I just spent the last month or so putting this together and converting it from a flatbed truck. And I just wanted to make a quick video to document the whole process. The thing that started this whole project off was my purchase of this chipper box at an auction across town. It had a huge dent in one side from a rollover accident, but it was, other than that, it was in great shape, and I thought I'd be able to fix it up. So a couple days after the auction, I had to go pick the box up. This was probably one of the sketchier parts of the whole thing, but I just drove slow, and yeah, it was no big deal. I got it back, no problem. One little thing that I did notice when I first inspected the box was that the part of the lower subframe was totally cracked through, but it was an easy fix. I just used a small jack and then jacked that up straight and just welded a piece of angle iron in. So right here, this is just kind of a temporary thing, and then I welded it all solid later after I put it on the frame. My plan was to rent a small telehandler, and then I would use that to do all the lifting for the installing the dump box on the truck. And I needed a good point to tie to. The telehandler only came with pallet forks, and I didn't want to tie directly to that. I was going to use some 3/4 inch like Samson Arborplex big rigging line for my slings. And so all my rigging experience was just from tree work. So I kind of just went with what I was familiar with. And I basically, what this is, you'll see at the very end, but basically I was kind of inspired by the porter wraps. So I put a couple friction bollards on basically a metal pallet, and then I could put the pallet forks in that and just lock the slings off on the barrels of these homemade porter wraps, and then tie a third sling just to the middle beam, and yeah, it worked pretty good. I wanted to use 3 slings instead of 4. Kind of just know from experience. I put together another chipper truck a couple years ago, and on that one I just tied 4 ropes directly to the forks on the pallet, or the pallet forks on the telehandler, and it was just, it probably isn't very safe. Not that this solution here is OSHA approved, but the pallet forks are kind of sharp, so that's probably not the best idea. And then it's just really hard to adjust everything. So with 3, I figured I could kind of make a more balanced pick, and then also with the porter wrap style bollards, I could just basically lock stuff off at whatever length I needed, and it should come up. When I picked it up, it should kind of remain in that orientation if I got everything tensioned pretty good. So yeah, this tool ended up working pretty good. I just made it, it was super cold out, so the rental company wouldn't let me rent the thing for a couple weeks, so I had time to kill, and all the metal was just scrap metal that I had laying around. So yeah, it was a good kind of warm-up project to test my welds. So here you can see the whole thing is kind of coming together. So hopefully you can kind of understand what I'm talking about. But I've got some videos I'll show in a second of me actually using this tool on the install. So it should make sense then if it doesn't now. So here you can see my kind of sketchy rigging pallet thing in action. So yeah, I tried to use kind of similar concept as if you were using a crane to remove a tree, where just get the lifting point kind of centered over the weight, just eyeball everything, and then 3 slings coming off of that. So just send one of those out to each far edge of the piece. I got them tensioned as good as I could by hand, and then yeah, locked everything off. And then when I went to lift, the piece kind of remained in the same orientation as I expected, and then yeah, everything went pretty smooth. So I ended up selling the old flatbed off of the F450, so that was nice. But I had to deliver it a couple of days after doing all this, so I ended up just setting it on another flatbed truck. So yeah, it was kind of like musical chairs with all these truck beds going back and forth between different trucks. But yeah, I got that set on there, and then the chipper box went on the frame of the F450 pretty good. It was a little easier than I thought. Maybe I just got lucky kind of backing it up into place. Everything lined up pretty good, and then yeah, I just lowered it down and then got it bolted on with some big U-bolts, and then yeah, I supplemented those U-bolts with some extra um, supports that I'll show later. So I got 5 of the big Buyers products body mounting U-bolts on there, but I wanted to make it a little stronger, so I welded a couple pieces of channel iron onto the very back of the frame in the dump box just by the hinges, just to add a little extra strength. So here I'm just cutting off this big lever that would activate the prop that would prop up the dump box. The linkage was all bent up, so it wasn't working anyways. I left the prop under there, but you just have to do it by hand now instead of using this. So I've put this toolbox in off camera. It's nothing crazy. These brackets are just welded to the frame, both sides, and then toolbox is bolted on. And then I've got a hole drilled for the hydraulic lines, and then a hole for these electrical big wires. And then there's the mounting holes for the hydraulic pump. So there's nowhere to hook the big wires that I needed for the hydraulic pump to the factory Ford battery terminals. So I got off of Amazon just these big multiple terminal connectors, and I had to cut the original Ford connector off, put that in this new terminal, and then bolt on the big pump wires. I didn't film very much of the electrical, but did kind of matching the colors and then a little bit of trial and error. I got the basic functions of the taillights working. Okay, so update on the rear dent here. So I kind of just cut away where it was pinched up against that side there and then just beat on it with the sledgehammer. Obviously it doesn't look great. It looks like somebody hit it with a sledgehammer, but it looks better than it did. So I think I'm just going to cut. I want to get this back end a little better, I think. So I'm just going to cut the strip out here and I also want to try seeing, I think if I score on that sheet of 14 gauge plate I've got, I think if I just score a line, I'll be able to bend it by hand. So I want to try that because I think I'll be able to do this all myself as well without recruiting somebody to help with the brake. And then I don't have a hole saw that's big enough for this light, but I'm not worried about that. I'll just leave that flat. Okay, here's kind of a loose fit. This is what I came up with. So I just scored this along here and was able to bend it by hand. So looks like it fits pretty decent. The hard part's going to be kind of blending out. It's obvious. It's still going to be. It's not going to look perfect, but it doesn't really need to. So I've got this kind of notched here and here, and so I can bend these a little bit, and then yeah, I'll just tack it up. Probably just tack it in small spots and just kind of work my way around it or something. We'll see. There it is, all welded up. It's pretty ugly welds, but they're all gonna get ground down, so. So I just chopped out all the dents, tried to make the lines as straight as I could. Initially, I thought I was gonna have to have a sheet metal shop use a press brake to bend something to the right shape, but yeah, I was happy that I was able to figure out on my own, just getting everything bent up, and saved a lot of money that way. Okay, here's where I'm at now. So I cut this down quite a bit farther. So it should be 35 inches from here to the top. So I'm just gonna cut out a big piece with this corner notched first and see if I can get it all to fit. Okay, I've got this piece just tacked in there. Definitely measured wrong, so I'm gonna have to trim. I was planning on having the overhang on this side, but my measurements, there's a bunch of gaps over here. I'll have to fill this in, so I'm gonna have to trim up this and then obviously the corner there. But I had to do this outside because I had to get the jack back out to lift that top piece. Okay, I've got this panel fully welded, then ground back. So some of the spots here, it's not 100% flush, but it's pretty good. I've got this cut to about the right size. Should hopefully match that hole there. And then I just scored a line here. I'll have to cut it a little deeper, I think. The angle grinder, and then I'm just gonna bend that up and try to get about that angle. That's just to trace that off of that cut up there. This is probably getting pretty close. Now it's just going to be trial and error. Okay, it's on there. It's loose right now. I had to do a lot of messing around to get this bottom relatively level. But it's pretty close. It's close enough at least. Here's where we're at with it tacked in. So smaller gaps that need to be filled, so I made this thing. I think weld that on like that or like this, and then tighten that screw to pull everything into place. So I've got to get this more flush, and then that side needs to come out a little bit and the top needs to come down. Okay, here's this tool in action. I think welders call these like dogs or something, but you just have to pull. See if you can see this here. Gotta pull the dark side out. There it is, pretty flush. Hope that camera shows it or not. Here it is, all fully welded. Now I just got to grind it back, and then I'll put this all the way along this corner here. Pretty close. So I'm not a very good painter. For prep work, I just sprayed everything with some filler primer, sanded that up to 600 grit sandpaper, I think. Then I went ahead and just got a quart of white Rust-Oleum, thinned it with some mineral spirits, and then put it in this cheap HVLP spray gun. I've got just powered by a big air compressor. And then, yeah, first coat I had some runs, but I just sanded those down and painted over them with a second coat. And then I did one coat of clear coat at the end too. So the end result of the painting, I think it ended up looking pretty good. It's definitely good enough for a work truck that's just going to get beat up. The colors matched pretty close. I didn't want to paint like the whole side or anything crazy, so I just blended it the best I could. And yeah, I think it came out pretty good. So here it is in action for the first time. Yeah, it works good, looks pretty decent, and way cheaper than what it would have cost to buy an already assembled chip truck. So hopefully with this video I could just show that none of this stuff is really that complicated. I know I would have been pretty intimidated by something like this a couple years ago, but yeah, you just do it one step at a time and you'd be surprised at what you can get done.